Hey, it's Charlie, co-host of the show. Quick note before we get started. We recorded the episode during our usual time, but a glitch with our recording equipment caused us to lose the second half of the episode. We re-recorded the segment we lost, but there may be some audio issues as you listen. Just wanted to be upfront about that. Okay, let's start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Media Play News Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Parkman.
And I'm co-host Charlie Shirley.
As you saw, last week was a monster episode, mostly covering all the new DC announcements. There was a new trailer for The Flash, which debuted during the Super Bowl over the weekend, and surprisingly, looks a lot better than I expected. In spite of Ezra Miller's recent brushes with the law, they may actually pull this movie off. We'll be taking a break from superhero stuff and keeping it light this week to get into the latest news from the fronts of the streaming wars. Disney is fast approaching the deadline to buy out Comcast's stake in Hulu, so we'll open with some details on that. Peacock is debuting a feature called Watch With, which can really differentiate them from other streamers. And we'll wrap things up with a check-in on the box office, which we haven't really been paying much attention to lately. Before we get into all that, anything new over there?
Well, one thing that I do want to comment on, even though we're not talking about superheroes, is that in addition to there being a, debut trailer for The Flash, there was also a debut trailer for Fast 10, which, for one, it's amazing that they've gotten that far. I think this is like a part one as well. But I only bring that up because those movies, they have come quite a long way from the days of stealing DVD players in the original Fast and the Furious. They're basically superhero movies now, too, where instead of Iron Man suits, they're cars.
It's incredible. And I really hope that someone takes advantage of Fast 10, your seatbelts. Otherwise, I'll be really dissatisfied, even though I don't think I've seen any clips of them wearing seatbelts.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. I feel like they took seatbelts out of all the cars when they're actually shooting them.
Well, because you can't jump out of your car after ramming it into another car to catch your friend who is also jumping out of a car if your seatbelt's on.
Yeah, those movies they've reached a whole new level. The last one I saw was either 7 or 8. It's where they were all like driving through Antarctica on like a big ice shelf. And it's
there was a submarine.
Yeah, 10 cars versus a nuclear submarine. I don't know what they're smoking at the studios over there to like write these scripts, but how they're going to top that, I mean, I'm not going to see it, but I'm sure they're going to do something insane.
I'll find a box set and I'll do a deep dive for the show.
Perfect.
What else have you been watching?
Well, not too much on TV. There was a stealth release from the video game publisher Double Fine, who released a 32-part documentary series about the making of their game Psychonauts 2. So I watched a few parts of that over the weekend. It's really nice. It's lighthearted, and it's told over the course of like 7 years of development. Or 7 years of development.
Yeah.
Because the early parts of their documentary start in 2015 and apparently go all the way up until the release of their game, which I think might have been last year, maybe 2021.
Yeah, I think it was 2021. Does it include the VR game they did?
Yeah, they have talked about that.
Yeah. So I recently played, this isn't a video game podcast. I'll keep it very brief. I played the first Psychonauts for the first time last year. It's incredible. I was really excited to get into the second one, and then I haven't played it yet. I bought it. It's on my console. Haven't played it. But yeah, Double Fine makes cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely. The only other TV thing that I've been watching has been The Last of Us. It's been chugging along, putting out another great episode, which they released early on Friday night to HBO Max subscribers. They'll tell you it's to incentivize people to sign up for HBO Max, but really it's because it would have debuted on the same night as the Super Bowl. And last I checked, 1 or 2 people watch the Super Bowl every year. Might eat into their numbers for Last of Us. And then one comment we got from Roger again. This is regarding last week's interview that I had with Holly Giam about the documentary Children of the Mist. And he said it was, quote, the best ever and quite fascinating. It makes my case that seeing a movie and then analyzing it is the way to go. I think He's kind of like digging at our tendency towards making fun of movies that we haven't even seen. But thanks for the comment anyway. I appreciate it.
Look, we'll get there. We'll be first rate in no time.
I want to remind everyone listening that Children of the Mist is actually going to be available on Vudu by the time this episode comes out. So you should watch it. It's a lot better than Netflix's stupid serial killer documentaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What did you watch?
I've been, as I alluded to last week, dealing with some, personal stuff, namely finding an apartment. So I didn't spend a ton of time, watching things. I did, today, after seeing the trailer for The Flash this weekend. I watched the DC animated movie that is inspired by the same source material, the Flashpoint Paradox. It's on HBO Max. I downloaded it to my phone and I kind of watched it passively as I did my job today. And that one holds up. It's a solid adaptation of that story. I think it adds some stuff. It removes some other things that wouldn't work as well within the medium of, a film. And, considering again, the Flash movie coming out later this year is based on that same source material of, Flashpoint. I just thought it'd be like a good thing to revisit. I'll probably revisit the comic itself, later this week as well, if I have the time.
Yeah. Well, I do want to comment a little bit on the Flash, but like you already said, no superheroes allowed this episode.
Yep. We'll get into it when it's thematically appropriate because we have actual stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Real news, such as this week's inspiration. I'm drinking a Heineken brought to you by Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Mania. I think I saw an ad for that during the Super Bowl.
He was slinging the 0%, the non-alcoholic one.
Gross.
Which, like, I did catch that ad. I wasn't really active. I wasn't watching the Super Bowl or the big game. We don't want to get sued. And I did see that ad on my way to the bathroom in the bar I was in that was playing the Super Bowl. And I was like, this is sad. But I am also drinking a common and easily available beer. I'm drinking a tall can of Tecate. I almost called it a tall boy, like I was in a frat house. But it's 2 cans of Tecate stacked on top of each other. And that's what I'm having for the duration of the show.
Delicious. All right, let's get into our first news segment. We're talking about Disney and the possibility of losing Hulu, which I've never really associated Hulu with Disney anyway. So if that ends up happening, there's really no change in my mind. But Disney's apparently faced with a 2024 deadline to acquire Comcast's outstanding ownership stake in Hulu for at least $27.5 billion.
Oof.
But given Disney's current financial situation, CEO Bob Iger is having second thoughts. If you didn't see elsewhere in the news, Disney recently laid off 7,000 workers as part of some company-wide cost cutting. And
they also announced Toy Story 5 and Frozen 3.
Oh, man.
There's a third one.
To soften the blow.
I actually saw a tweet about Frozen 2's development, or I think this was a general documentary about Disney Plus, but then kind of like a B story within the documentary was Disney or Pixar saying we have to make Frozen 2, and up until a year or even 6 months before the movie came out, they just had a bunch of disconnected scenes with the characters, but no overall through line for the story. But I think that movie still made a ton of money. So
they people liked it,
right? Because it's for children. Let's not forget. But to put into perspective the stakes of this possible loss of Hulu, Hulu itself ended last year with 43.5 million subscribers. The platform has quarterly operating expenses and production costs of $2.1 billion. And that's quarterly expenses, not yearly expenses. from what I found on their actual revenue, they made $87 million.
That's not good.
Yeah, so that's like an extra $2 billion that they're just lighting on fire every 3 months. The incentive for Disney to keep Hulu around is the average income per subscriber each month on Hulu is about $12.50, while Disney Plus's average income per subscriber is only $5.77. So over twice the value per subscriber there.
That's rough.
So my biggest question to you is, Charles, do we even care about this?
I definitely do, but probably not in the direction that they would like. I think it's good if Disney doesn't own fully another media outlet, because they're already like rapidly approaching a monopoly. I think it'd be best if like they didn't have, because like that is a significant amount of money difference for them, but like Disney is already pretty big. And like Disney Plus is like largely kind of the novelty of Disney Plus is the MCU stuff is there. The Star Wars stuff is all there. And there's a bunch of children's entertainment there. And they seem to be throwing it together with like, it's pretty easy to get Disney Plus. Like there are a bunch of like, I think Verizon and stuff was like giving it for free with the contract and things like that. So it's like, I don't think Disney's like gonna be, I think we get to it a little bit later, but Disney's not doing as well as they'd like, but it's not like they're hurting, right? So I'd much prefer that we like don't have another media monopoly, because like there was also with the talk either I think 2021, 2022, Netflix was talking about purchasing AMC. And like that would be a whole deal. And AMC, which we'll also talk about, is also like not being super cool. So I don't know. I think it's probably best for the consumer if Disney Plus doesn't also own Hulu.
Yeah, like that's true, but there's also that balancing act between everybody complaining about there being too many streaming services to have to follow, where, I don't want to watch everything on Hulu or everything on Paramount Plus. I just want one thing. But you abstract that logic away to like the other 10 streaming services, and people are going to start picking and choosing what they want. So it's like people simultaneously want the freedom of choice to be able to go with one streamer or the next, but we don't want everything consolidated into one either, because then you lose that competition angle, and then everyone starts abusing their power with the subscribers they have.
Right. Yeah. And it's definitely about, cause like one of the things that Hulu and Amazon Prime Video both offer is that you can add other streamers, like other streaming services or like libraries to your account. Like I have Stars through Hulu, but like because I have Stars through Hulu, that means I also have Stars through Amazon. Like I have access to Stars anywhere that like Stars streams. So like that's like that kind of a la carte method, I think could work for more people if it were as accessible. Like if Hulu were not already set up the way it is now, or it was closer to where it was when it kind of first started, when like Netflix was the one you go to for movies, and then Hulu was the one you go to for television. And Hulu has like all the network shows. Like you can, even now they still do something will broadcast, like it's on its air date, and then it'll be available on Hulu the following day. So like if it were more of like a hub where you had access to different streaming services that you could pick as you like, then they're in direct competition with each other within like the same platform. Like in the same way, like if you go to like a marketplace that has like a bunch of different, businesses and like restaurants or whatever in them, you can, no one wants to be too much more expensive than anybody else, because then you'll just go to the next place that's a couple feet down the hall. But that's not the world we're in now. It'd be nice if that were the direction it had taken.
Yeah, I just see there being a lot more of like larger platforms offering giant piles of money to smaller platforms like the one we're about to get into, to have like exclusivity over all the content they have. So getting right into the next story, we're going to revisit Peacock, who must have been listening to our recent episode where we stomped all over them, because they're poised to roll out a unique feature. It will enable viewers to interact with talent on select shows in real time, including during Q&A sessions. So they're going to be calling this Watch With, and its first showing will be the season 2 premiere of Bel Air, with cast members Jabari Banks and Ali Sholatan. So this, even though it's a unique feature, I'm not quite sold on it, because Quibi, when you think about it, also had a very unique value proposition in that you could watch 8-minute engaging TV shows in vertical mode on your phone. And yet, when everybody was locked down and kind of like the golden age of TV watching, where literally all you could do was sit in front of your TV, they cratered completely.
Quibi, I think they just launched at the wrong time, because I think if we hadn't all been at home where we could watch stuff on our laptops and televisions, Quibi might have been better. Like I think their market was like, hey, if you're on if you're in commute, or if you're like on your break or whatever, you can just have these 8-minute things. And, if you are watching on something bigger, you get the widescreen view, and there's like maybe some other stuff. But it launched when everyone had as much free time as they were ever going to have. So I don't know if micro content was really it was too long for stuff like Instagram Reels or TikTok, and too short for actually longer term media consumption. But we're not talking about the fall of Quibi and their mistakes.
Yeah, this is not a Quibi apologist podcast. So when the first thing I think about when I see kind of live interaction with kind of the quote unquote content creators of these shows is stuff like Twitch and YouTube, with their army of streamers and reaction videos being super popular. That, at first glance might make you a little bit optimistic about this Watch With feature. But then on the flip side, the mediums that you're considering are very different, where on the one hand with Twitch and YouTube, you've got either gaming, or people just kind of debating each other, or reaction videos to movie trailers and stuff. And all that is either very organic or very short, and in general is just unscripted. Whereas you have the stars of this show watching stuff and most likely kind of saying what they think about it at the time. As someone who watches a lot of commentary tracks, yeah, that sounds good. But if I'm watching something that I'm probably invested in, then I actually don't want people to talk over the thing that I'm watching. But I don't know. That might just be me. What do you think about that?
So as someone who personally doesn't get the appeal of watching streamers, I can't directly tap into the reasoning. I mean, I can, because obviously I can see the cultural impact. It's obviously a big deal. It's a big market. People make their entire livings streaming and stuff like this. I do wonder, so I'm a movie talker. I will talk during an entire movie, even if I've never seen it before. Just because, I don't know. I'm used to watching stuff alone, where I can just do whatever I want while I'm doing it. But I wonder with a scripted show where you have the stars of that show on it, they know what's going to happen. So are they going to be engaging full on while the show is airing, or is it going to be an after show HBO Max has been doing for a lot of their programming, where there's an after show or an accompanying content like a podcast or YouTube video? Because those feel different in a substantive way than we're watching it live with the stars of the show.
Yeah, there's this Q&A component, and you'd be insane to think they'd be doing a Q&A while the show is still running. So it seems like they'll have a kind of like a reaction, picture in picture of the stars while the show is going, and then stick around because we'll be answering your audience questions.
Yeah, it's the only way it makes sense from like just by virtue of how that consumption works. Like, compared to streamers who are like usually like playing a video game or like reacting to like a trailer or like watching something for the first time, or like the audience maybe will know already like what the thing is, or the whole thing is that everybody's reacting in real time to whatever's going on. Like that's a different thing than here's a scripted like set thing, especially considering that I believe Bel Air is a weekly airing. So like you can binge it. It comes out the day it comes out, and you wait till the next week to see the second episode. So I don't know. It's like, it's an interesting idea. Like I understand the executive impulse to try to capitalize on streaming, like that, or like YouTube and Twitch streamers, like that type of direct interaction with the stars. I still see it working. I'm just not sure how it'll work with a scripted television show, and especially considering like they're still like representing the network at the same time, right? Like it's not like their stream. This is Peacock setting this up. They are on the clock doing this. And so by that virtue, they're working. So like there's only so much they can even like do and say in terms of, I'm sure like there are limits to what they can do and say based purely on the fact that this is an official tie-in to the show that's being produced.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, even though at the start of like every DVD commentary, there'll be kind of like the text on the black screen, the views expressed by the people contained herein do not necessarily, just like gross legalese. But I have yet to actually hear something that one of those people say, which would make me pause for a second and think, I'm surprised they put that idea out there.
Right. I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out. Peacock's, they got to find something.
Yeah, I mean, if you thought Hulu was losing a lot of money, if I'm remembering right off the top of my head from one of the last episodes, Peacock is projecting to lose $3 billion this year. So we'll see. I'm rooting for them. But if I was a betting man, I would not be betting on them. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, let's move on. Lastly this week is the numbers at the box office, and they are nothing to write home about. The biggest release this past weekend was Magic Mike's Last Dance, drawing $8.2 million in U.S. theaters. It was still enough to keep Avatar 2 dethroned, which pulled only 700,000 in the U.S. We actually didn't get into it last week because we were so superhero brained. But Avatar 2 was dethroned by M. Night Shyamalan's new movie, Knock in the Woods.
Knock at the Cabin. I know exactly what you did. You mixed up Knock at the Cabin and Cabin at the Woods.
Yep.
Both. Sure did. It's probably a much better movie than this is. Because other than Splits, I think all of his movies have been critically panned. Like Old, the one that like everybody made fun of when it came out, I think just like last year. People,
it was last year.
Yeah, getting older really fast at the beach. And from what I found out, there was some sort of hand-wavy, stupid sci-fi explanation for that happening.
Of course. But worldwide, Avatar 2 has still made $2.181 billion. So they're probably okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about them too much. Looking forward to the sequels.
Yeah, but is there anything else we should have on our radar since it's been kind of a dud this weekend? Or this past weekend, at least.
I have to break our no superheroes rule. Ant-Man is coming out this weekend. You may have seen it also during the Super Bowl at your trailer in the bar of not a trailer for the movie, but a ad for Heineken starring Ant-Man and his aunt.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so as much as I want to dive into my ritualistic hate of all things Marvel, I have some compelling stats about the franchise. So from 2022, they released 3 movies. Those averaged 5.5% of the year's domestic box office each.
That's insane.
Yeah, so that means 1 in every 6 tickets sold was for a Marvel movie. It was their second highest grossing year in 13 years. But we actually have some breaking news. Reviews for Ant-Man are starting to come out. And last I saw on Rotten Tomatoes, only a few hours ago, it has grabbed a 55% certified rotten rating.
Oof.
It's the second ever Marvel movie to get a rating that low. I checked. The other one was The Eternals. They're around 47%. And it's telling that that movie was also a Phase 4 movie. But 1 in every 6 tickets sold for Marvel speaks for itself. They still have a lot of runway to go. And then kind of like possibly connected to this news, at least in terms of like test screenings for Ant-Man, there's a interview with Entertainment Weekly that Kevin Feige had. This just came out. He said that moving forward, Marvel is going to slow down its output of shows. He didn't explicitly say if it was movies, but I could very easily see them mixing some stuff around. Yeah. And, you know, his corporate speak was, quote, all movies and shows will have time to shine. But I don't know if they're looking at kind of like their review scores with Eternals and Ant-Man getting really low Rotten Tomatoes scores. And actually the third lowest Marvel movie is Thor: Love and Thunder, yet another recent movie.
Yep, that was also last year. That was one of the 3 that everyone wanted to see and was, I don't know, maybe a bit disappointed, myself included.
Yeah. So it's definitely hard to avoid talking about Marvel just because it's like such a dominant force within movies itself. But maybe we're starting to see kind of like the first real signs of fatigue. Obviously not just based on box office numbers last year, but critically, I think we're seeing a trend moving downward. Not a good way for them.
Yeah, I mean, they still have 8 confirmed projects coming out this year. Potentially as many as 10, depending on production schedules finishing.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. We got that, and we've got 10 DC projects. So I hope you like superhero content, kids. It's not going anywhere.
I mean, those 10 DC projects are over the next 5 years. So that's a different approach as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see how that all shakes out, because it is definitely like the discussion around superhero fatigue and like on a larger scale, blockbuster fatigue has definitely been like a discussion that's been had more and more often, I feel, from just what I've been seeing on social media, and like also talking to other people who aren't as invested. As you can definitely tell from me on this show, I'm definitely heavily invested in superhero media as a comic book fan, but it's not for everybody, and there is a lot of it, and it seems a lot of people are starting to feel that that's basically all you have. Every now and then something else will sneak through, like A24 is still doing stuff. It's not that. There are like a handful of smaller non-blockbuster films that kind of push through the ether. But for like every, The Northman, you also have like, 8,000 Years of Longing, which like I found out about the week it came out and did go out to see that opening weekend, but like in a theater of maybe 20 people. So hopefully the correct thing happens and it opens, like the floodgates, or the hose opens up a little bit, so that it's not just here's what's going to make a $50 million opening weekend. Here's some stuff that's a little bit more diverse, like a wider range of stuff, like that huge boom we got in the late 70s and early 80s of like a number of unique ideas They were all coming out and all kind of given an equal shake by the studio. And that's how we end up with like so many different properties that now are being, driven to the ground because there's no confidence in new IP, but we wouldn't have those things if there hadn't been this big surge in new IP 35 years ago.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that too. I'm hoping for Hulu to break free of Disney, and I'm hoping for more low to mid-budget movies.
Yep, fingers crossed. But that's going to wrap us up this week. You can find links to these articles in the show notes and at MediaPlayNews.com. You can subscribe to the site's mailing list using the subscription link in the notes. You can email us directly at MediaPlayNewsPodcast@gmail.com to have your comments featured on the show, or find us on our new Twitter account at PodcastNPN. If you like the show, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. We really appreciate it. I'm Charles Parkman.
I'm Charlie Sholey.
And we will see you next week.